we had one script on the table, and I remember Ben Priest calling me going, lads, it's not your year this year. We were absolutely crestfallen, gutted. The sort of account lead came up to me and goes, I think you've got 2 days. If you can come back with something, I'll put it in front of them.
Hello and welcome to the Lions podcast with me, Simon Cook, CEO of Lions. In this In the Making series, we delve into the visionary and most Lion awarded minds in the creative marketing industry today and explore their past, their present, and their creative future. To bring their stories to life, we asked them to talk about 5 pieces of work. The work that made them want to be a creative in the first place, the work they wish they'd made themselves, the work that almost didn't get made, and then the work that made them. And then finally, the work that's still very much in the making. Today's guests believe that the best work doesn't make you think, it punches you in the feels. So known for making people smile, cry, or even squirm across memorable stories for brands like Marmite, Shelter, and John Lewis, to name just a few, today's guest has picked up more than 100 Lions throughout his 25-year career. And in 2020, he helped Adam and Eve DDB secure the Cannes Lions European Agency of the Decade. As Chief Creative Officer, Richard Brim is building a culture that welcomes a gang mentality and consistently outlandish and emotive ideas with big, big impact. Welcome to In the Making, Richard Brim. So I'm going to start with a quote which actually comes from your good self.
Okay.
And this is something you've said quite consistently throughout your career and defines a lot of the work that you've made over the years. What you've said is, emotion is a business tool that gives you an unfair advantage. What do you mean by that? And where does this belief in emotion ultimately come from?
I think if you can make people feel something for whatever the project is, then you're sort of 50% of the way there. And it's also fun to do. It's like when you tell a good story and you tell it well, it's seeing people's reactions and seeing people's engagement in that. Much to my old partner's, he hated this, but if we had an idea, I would run around and tell people it. And every single time I told it to different people, I'd embellish it or I'd see how they reacted to it and then slightly tweak it. And then it was just a way of formulating it in my brain. But it was really interesting seeing how people reacted to it.
So that has defined a lot of your work. It's almost your calling card. But I want to rewind a bit. I want to go back to where it all began. You grew up in Manchester.
Yeah.
I believe that you were quite the wheeler dealer, a bit of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about where that entrepreneurial spirit or slightly rebellious spirit comes from and how that shaped your career or your interest in creativity in the first place?
It was, I knew I was creative.
Yeah.
But I wasn't arty.
Okay.
And I knew I always had some sort of entrepreneurial scheme going on. So when Tommy Hilfiger first came in, I would hold like the equivalent of Avon parties and just get loads of pals around and sell fake Tommy Hilfiger t-shirts and I was using the art room to print Stussy t-shirts with screen printing until I got told off. But I always had something on the go. So I always really liked the sort of ebb and flow of business, and I knew I was sort of creative. But not necessarily a fine artist, or I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I liked this and I knew I liked that. So, and you put the two together.
1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on from there, one of the periods that you talk about a lot as being particularly creative or one that was particularly inspiring was the 90s.
Yeah.
So what was it about that particular period or what environment was being fostered in a lot of agencies that enabled people to produce the kind of work that you really relate to?
Well, I think it was a very formative part of my life. It was my teenage years. And it was also a part where I think this country was on absolute fire, music-wise and culture-wise. And the work that was being produced then was art. And I don't like calling what we do art, but then it was the you go into any teenager around the country's bedroom and there were Absolute ads on the wall and Levi's ads that have been ripped out of magazines and on the TV and cinema, it was things like Levi's ads again, but like Boddington's that was really funny and Tango, and the craft was really inspiring. And there's that whole thing of like the ads were better than the films. They really were. Like you put a track in a Levi's ad, it went to #1 immediately. It was really baked into culture, and people really cared. And I came into agency life in the early 2000s, and you just got the sense that people were having fun and they felt on top of the world, and they felt they could do anything. I mean, but I think the pinnacle of all that work, I think, is I would say, is Guinness Surfers. I think that is. I mean, it's a whole genre of its own.
Well, that is your first selection, of course. You mentioned joining agency life in about 2000.
Yeah.
Well, this came out in 1999, so it was a precursor to you joining the agency world, and a piece that has become a real reference point in our industry.
He waits. That's what he does. And I'll tell you what. Tick followed talk, followed tick, followed talk, followed tick.
So that was Guinness Surfer, for Diageo, gold-winning piece of work from 1999 and made by Abbott Mead Vickers. Tell us about what it was about this ad specifically that resonated with you. Where were you when you saw it, and how did it make you feel?
I was at college, and we were in the pub and we were watching the football, and the ad break came on, and like you're doing ad breaks, you can turn around, completely ignore them, and you go and get a drink.
Yeah.
And you saw the whole pub do exactly that. Everybody, and you heard the beginning of that drums.
Yeah. And
everybody sort of stopped and looked around, and you saw the face, and you saw the oddity of it, and you saw the black and whiteness of it, and the pub. Everybody in the pub sort of turned around and just watched and went quiet for 60 seconds or 90 seconds, or however long it was. Things stopped and people just watched.
Yeah, and communicated a product truth.
Yeah, really, really, really simple.
In a very
truth.
simple way. Exactly. What did you take from it, and if anything, and how have you injected that into your own work over the years?
I think, it's one of the most beautifully crafted pieces of film, and I'd take it out of the advertising space. It's an exceptional bit of 90-second film. Everything about it is I would say frame perfect. When you're outside of the industry, you just view things as oh, that's great.
Yeah.
When you're getting in and you're trying to do things like that yourself, it made me feel very jealous.
So quite early on in your career, you actually left London and went to Germany.
Yeah.
Tell us about how that came about. I'm interested in how a boy who grew up in Manchester, who then went to Hamburg.
Yeah.
What did you get from those experiences?
It's like the Beatles.
Yeah, it is a bit, isn't it? What did you get from those experiences that you wouldn't have got by just going and starting your career in London only?
It was completely by accident. We were at a final degree show, and somebody came up to us and said, "I'm from an agency in Hamburg. Would you be interested in coming out and working in Hamburg?" And we had a couple of fires go, like a couple of sort of ins with agencies in London, and we sort of called them up and they said, "Well, nothing's happening now till the new year." And so we're like, "Okay, we'll go to Hamburg." And it was a really interesting time because we were being paid properly. We weren't doing sort of placement. And we got into an agency, and it just worked slightly different over there. They didn't really work in teams. They had copywriters, they had art directors. And so we had to grow up pretty quick and learn the ropes pretty quick. And it was just really interesting to just be part of something different. And it really, when we came back, a lot of we went, I think we started our first job with a bit more of a maturity because we'd sort of been going, "Oh, you're a team now. Off you go."
Yeah.
There's no sort of playing that naivety. We had to sort of pretend we knew what we were doing. And so it sort of maybe sort of pushed us forward a little bit in terms of years-wise, and pretending to know what we're doing.
Good
which
experience.
I'm still doing now.
So you took everything you learnt in Hamburg and then came back to London and joined Rainey Kelly. We've actually had a chat with some of your colleagues from the time. We've actually spoken to an ex-colleague of yours, Chris Hodgkiss.
Oh, fuck.
Is that bad?
No.
One of the people who actually hired you into the role at Rainey Kelly, who's now a senior creative at VCCP.
Yeah.
He told us that even once you'd entered agency life, you didn't quite give up the wheeling and dealing.
No.
So what do you remember from that time and from Chris especially and other people who helped show you the ropes of this industry?
It was so much fun. And you were immediately thrown into this sort of world where you felt anything was possible. And I think what I really learned there was about having fun and having fun around the work and not taking it too seriously, taking it seriously enough for the clients, but it's so powerful when you're having fun. Great work is produced, and it was. There's so many people that we worked with at that time have gone on to do amazing things. Like I think the guys went on set of Adam and Eve, and Nils was there, and he went up and sat on Uncommon. It was a really magical time to be part of something. You really felt like you were part of something, and that's a really big lesson. That if you feel like you are part of a greater mission, you will go to the nth degree to make sure that you do the best for it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into your second piece of work, and as a reminder, this is the piece of work you wish you'd made yourself. So, started to really refine and build your own taste at the agencies you were working in. And then something really caught your eye. There was a piece of work that actually won 2 Grand Prix at Cannes Lions, the Outdoor Grand Prix, and it won for Titanium as well in 2011. This piece of work is for Decode Jay-Z, for Bing by Droga 5 New York. What was it about this piece of work that made you, as we say to the Titanium jury, stop in your tracks and reconsider the way forward?
When I came into the industry, I was really surprised at the structure of the industry. You went into agencies, and this agency did advertising, this agency did the media, this agency did design. I mean, it sounds such an archaic point of view, but this was 20 years ago. And I never really understood why it was so fragmented. But I remember being with my old partner, Dan, and I was seeing Decoded. And there was a real moment of like, that's it. That's exactly, there's not a TV ad in sight. There's not a poster, there's millions of posters in sight. But it was one of those things where you looked at it and you were like, okay, this feels different and it feels right and it feels a lot of fun.
Bing, Microsoft's search engine, came to us to drive trial of Bing Search and Maps and increase their relevance with a young audience. At the same time, we knew that Jay-Z would soon be launching his autobiography, Decoded. With one big idea, we harnessed this epic moment in pop culture, connected our client to a new demographic, and gave millions a reason to use Bing. We started by putting every page of Jay-Z's book out in the world, every day for a month, prior to the book's release. But the pages weren't just randomly placed. Every page's location was inspired by the story on each page, putting Jay-Z's entire biography in context. Fans could actually walk through Jay-Z's life right where it happened.
I truly believe that if a work is simple in its core, but looks so fucking difficult to produce, I think that is the winning formula. I think if you look at, they had to get Gucci to agree to put titles inside a jacket. It was printed on swimming pools. It was made, plaques were made and put, I mean, it was just exceptional and it looked so difficult to do. But such a simple idea. That piece by Droga New York really elevated how we should be doing comms then. And again, made me very jealous.
It was, it's a piece of work that's often singled out as one of the most notable for the start of the integrated years.
Yeah.
How have we seen that evolve over the years? I mean, it's a term that we don't hear very much.
No, I think it's opened up what the shape should be and what creative thinking can look like. It made me very excited to be part of this industry and what you could do in it.
And the next chapter.
Yeah.
And speaking of next chapters, we're going to get into the Adam and Eve DDB years.
Yeah.
One of the more defining aspects of this period of your career, it would be remiss of us not to talk about John Lewis.
Yeah. Okay.
I can only imagine the pressure year on year of producing the most highly anticipated ad of the year. And not just in the UK, in other parts of the world as well. How did you deal with that pressure?
I think more than the pressure, it was an amazing thing to be part of. It was going back to the thing I was saying at the beginning about where people cared about the next Levi's ad. We'd get people calling the agency pretending to be production companies to try and find out what the story is for this year's John Lewis ad. And there were polls on who's going to do the music and people make their own versions of it. And it wasn't selling anything. It was just selling the notion of thoughtful gifting. And that was there before I joined. And I remember when we did join, we said the one thing we want is a John Lewis ad. It was absolutely terrifying. But it was exhilaratingly terrifying. Like, I think fear is a really debilitating emotion, but the fear of it's going to be front page of the Daily Mail and everyone's going to have an opinion on it. I don't know. I found it really drove me.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how you harness the fear, not just for yourself, but for the team working on it in a really positive way.
Yeah, when the script was bought, I literally take the team out for a beer, going, okay, this is unlike anything you have ever experienced. And what's going to happen is the ad is going to launch and it's going to be the best thing in the world has ever seen for about a day. And then somebody else is going to come out with something maybe better, maybe worse, but that is going to be way better. Go home, John Lewis. This one's better. And then it'll level out. And then Sainsbury's will come out. And then it'll be like, the Sainsbury's ad is way better than the John Lewis ad. And then everything will level out and you just can't listen to it and don't go on Twitter. People have an opinion on it.
They really do.
They really do.
Well, it became a cultural moment. Monty in particular, there's an interesting backstory to how it got made, and which is apt because the piece we're looking at, your third piece, is the work that nearly didn't get made.
Yeah. So the John Lewis ad had just been written the year when we started. So we're like, okay, next year we are...
Yeah.
And we wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of scripts. And with hindsight, they are all the same scripts that when you get new teams coming in and think about writing a John Lewis ad, they write the same scripts. So it was always about an old man and his wife dies, or a kid with a grandpa with an old man that lives next door that's lonely, all that sort of...
All the tropes, yeah.
So we had to get all of that out of our system. And we had one script on the table, and I remember Ben Priest calling me going, lads, it's not your year this year. And I remember exactly where I was, and I was devastated. And I was like, are you sure? He goes, yeah, they've bought something and they're going to make it. And we were absolutely crestfallen, gutted. The sort of account lead came up to me and goes, I think you've got 2 days. I think you've got 2 days, go off. If you can come back with something, I'll put it in front of them. And we were like, okay. So middle of summer, we hot-footed off to a pub and sat by a fire and sweating. And it was literally the only thing we could think of. We were really broke. We've written a lot. And, originally, it was about a monkey, imaginary monkey, and then there was a bit of a discussion, a heated discussion between Dan and I about whether a monkey screams Christmas or should we make it a penguin. And we came back in and we literally, almost like exhausted to the finish line, handed the script over to Tammy, who was the account lead, and she was like, "This is great, it's great, this is great, this is great." And we're like, "Whoa, okay."
All my little plans and schemes.
Ben saw it and liked it. And then that afternoon, we were in John Lewis toy department designing penguins that kissed with magnets. And it was an amazing experience. It was just, and it's a real lesson in anything can always be bettered. Anything, you as a creative, you can you sometimes fixate on ideas and think this is the only way to answer it. And there's not, there's millions of ways to answer it. And a creative can always be bettered. To the annoyance of producers back at Adam and Eve, I live by that.
Well, look, we spoke to Martin Beverley, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Adam and Eve DDB, about this story in particular. And in his words, this was classic Rick. Because he told us, this is typical of Rick. He's always thinking, always pushing, always annoying people with his new ideas. Monty the Penguin is a story about a child's imagination. And at the heart of it, Rick is a big kid. When he comes up with a great idea or hears a great idea, you can see that he physically fizzes with excitement. I love the way that he always brings fun to everything he does and sometimes causes trouble, but in a good way. He does need to grow up a bit, though.
Says the person that looks about 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that true? You mentioned that, you know, you find ideas exciting, of course, and infectious, and you want to test them immediately with people around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that separates us from an accountancy firm is that. I think we could very easily become a service agency that people just go in and serve. And I do it from a selfish point of view because I want to formulate the story in my head. But I also see the benefit of running up to Yvonne on reception and going, I've got this script, like, right, okay, you do this, and this is what this is. And they feel part of something. It's, again, bringing people in, feeling part of something.
Invested,
Yeah, and all we have is energy. Like the talent and creativity and taste will get you so far, but energy and positive energy and making people feel we've spoken about it before, part of something is really, really important.
Well, look, it was a gamble and a last minute pivot, but it was one that ultimately really paid off. So the Christmas sales brought in an extra 141 million that Christmas. And of course, it won the Filmcraft Grand Prix in 2015, but also, to prove its worth, the Creative Effectiveness Lions Grand Prix in 2016, the following year. And we thought we'd take you back to the moment that this was actually awarded. So here's a clip for the president of the Filmcraft jury on that given year, talking about why the jury awarded it. Take a look.
We're looking a lot of films, and the gold ones, many possible to keep the Grand Prix. But the jury started to think not just with brain and intelligence, but then started to thinking by the heart. And this film really touched our heart, absolutely.
Back to emotion.
Yeah.
So look, after 14 years in 2023, the relationship, you know, as things tend to happen, came to an end with John Lewis. Tell us why you decided not to pitch again for that business when that came up.
That's a tough one. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. I think we'd proven ourselves, and I would proven ourselves, and no one can take away what happened. And so it just felt more elegant to go, you know what, that was a great moment in time. We wish them the best of luck. We'll take that and we'll put a little bow on it and put it on the shelf, and we'll always be part of that.
Passing the baton, someone else having a go. We talked about fear earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you have an account like that and it has such notoriety, there must be a fear about it going away at some point.
Yeah.
Or losing it potentially.
Mm-hmm.
How does it actually feel when that happens? And is there a lesson to be learnt there?
That was one of many fears during lockdown. But when it happened, the decision was made very quickly. It wasn't like should we get in a room and discuss this? It's like, well, we're not doing it. And then it felt incredibly liberating and exciting. And what else may be in the offing?
Okay, it's time for your fourth piece of work now, and you've chosen, it's a bit of a theme here, another Christmas ad. Very different though, this one. This is the work that you believe made you. And that's, very open to interpretation, so we can get into that. But the piece is, of course, Sorry I Spent It on Myself. for Harvey Nicks. This won a whopping 4 Grand Prix in 2014, as well as 8 other Lions. So it was a huge year for this particular piece of work. Can you tell us what it is about this piece that's so important to you?
We were following on from a really successful line of ads. They've had great success over the years, and we just wanted to make sure that we at least didn't let that down. And it was a very simple idea. I don't think we realised the potency of the idea. Not in an arrogant way, but I think we just thought, oh well. And then actually, as we started to develop it, and it's always interesting when you give your ideas over to the maker. Like so we gave it to James Rouse, and you saw him getting excited about it. And you're like, okay, and he's like, we don't need a script. We just give people the premise of like, I'm selfish, you've got this, and so we just went on this shoot for 3 days, and just gave these just brilliant actors just the premise, and just saw what happened.
Elastic bands.
Elastic bands from Harvey Nichols, Dad.
Sorry, I spent it on myself. Gift collection.
Yeah, that's what the range is called.
Elastic band gift set.
Yeah.
Right.
2.
It's a really interesting way of doing things. And before that, I'd always been taught, no, you have to have everything on paper. And I'm like, if the idea is good enough, you don't. You can just give them the premise and just sort of mess around with it. One of the biggest things for me was when we went to the store the day of launch. It was in the Knightsbridge store. This very sort of slony lady literally wheeled up the sort of counter, the display stands we had, and she just said to the lady behind the counter, I was stood behind wanting to buy some. She goes, "I'll take all of it, but I want separate bags for each one." And I'm like, "Well, what are you doing?" She's like, "I'm giving it as Christmas present." And that idea of somebody retelling your gag, giving something, it's quite like one of those moments where you go. And so we knew it was fun, and we knew we had fun doing it. We didn't realize what was going to happen in Cannes. And that's not in a humble way. We thought it'd hover around the silvers. And it was a really weird week because both Dan and I had just had new babies, and we weren't going to Cannes. Because we didn't expect anything. And I remember getting a phone call from Ben Priest going, "You need to come out to Cannes." And like, well, we can't. And he said, no, you need to come out to Cannes, and you've got. And it was the first Grand Prix, and so we go out to Cannes, and the promise to both respective partners was we're only going to be there for a night, and so we were quite prepared just to have like one massive blowout.
Yeah.
And then we were on the Carlton Terrace, a little bit worse for wears. And I remember Jeremy Cragen coming up to me and go, "Congrats on the Grand Prix." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He goes, No, you got the press Grand Prix tomorrow night. And so it's back on the phone. She was going, "We're going to move our flight. Can we, fine. But, and we get home and we me and Nat are out with the baby, and there's a photo of me just like holding Hal, and he's 2 weeks old. And then literally 5 minutes later, we got a phone call from Ben Priest going, "What's the chance of you getting out again tonight?" And there was no chance. And he goes, "You've got 2 Grand Prix. You've got the film and you've got the titanium Grand Prix."
Wow.
Okay, give me 5 minutes. And we then flew back, and we're there for the Friday night or the Saturday.
Yeah, it must have been Friday.
It was Friday night. Yeah.
What a surreal year.
It was a really surreal year.
Amazing experience and paid off. Look, 26,000 products sold in 3 days at Harvey Nichols. And obviously went on to have one of its best years to date, according to our data at Walk. What was it about? You mentioned you weren't really sure how it was going to perform, both at the Lions, but also in the market as well. What was it about the particular idea that really resonated with people?
I think Christmas is all about giving and all about sort of goodwill to all. And this was just fucking selfish. It's like, don't don't think about others, think about yourself. And sort of tapped into a behaviour that maybe we've all got a bit in us.
And going against the convention of the Christmas category, we spoke to one of the jurors actually who judged that particular piece of work, Pete Favre, ex-creative chairman of Deutsche LA.
Yeah.
And this is what he had to say about it. He said the decision was made to award it, first of all, for its bravery.
Yeah.
It flies in the face of convention around holiday advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And they've taken a strategy to go the other way when rivals are going down the sales route. And it was remarkably bold, and that's why they wanted to recognise it. The point that this really proves is that, as we said at the beginning, you're a real champion for bold ideas, but sometimes, stupid ideas, irreverent ideas, silly ideas. And we've spoken about that a lot over the years. And at Cannes Lions in 2019, you actually gave a talk about and it was titled, The Wonder of What the Fuck.
Yeah.
What are the steps that you've taken, you think, within your own agencies, I should say now, to create a culture where people aren't afraid to be silly or be laughed at?
There's that whole thing of like, no idea is a bad idea, and this is a safe space, and you can say that as much as you like, unless people feel it, then people won't believe it. And I think you have to lead by example. I think you have to. I was brought up in an industry where, as the CCO and CDs, you had to know the answer, and it was a sign of weakness if you didn't know the answer. And I think that's nonsense. I think showing vulnerability and showing, I've not got a Scooby-Doo how we get there, but let's all just get around the table and try and figure it out. And it's not as a faux tactic. It's just like just being. Using all the buzzwords here, your authentic self, but just being like sort of open and not being afraid of showing vulnerability, and from vulnerability comes left fieldness of how we answer the problem. If you go, I don't know, and somebody goes, well, what if we did it like this? Like, I think there's a lot to be learned from that.
Talking a little bit about trends, because we do talk about humour and silliness and the ebbs and flows of how it disappears and then has a renaissance moment. There was lots of talk after the festival this year about the comeback of humour, silliness, zaniness, perhaps even a bit of a throwback to some of the work we talked about earlier in the 90s. What do you think about that? Do you think we're seeing enough of it? Do you believe that there's a renaissance happening?
I always get a little bit nervous about talking about one thing as a thing. I would hate to swing purely all the way into humour. I think we have to have an equilibrium. I want to see ideas that are just amazingly crafted. Like I thought Channel 4 this year was exceptional, like timeless classic. But then I want to see really dumb ideas. I get very scared of going too one way. It needs to be a smorgasbord of everything. And I think that's when the industry is most, it feels richer.
Interesting. Well, we'll see where it goes next year. We're on to the final stretch and we're up to present day now. So, we've talked about work that has been. Be great to talk about work that may be coming up. So the final piece of work, or more of a theme really, is about the work that's very much in the making. Yeah. So two parts to this. Anything specific you can tell us about what may be coming?
Yeah.
And then secondly, as you look ahead to the next chapter of your career, you're across a lot of agencies now, have a lot of influence creatively. What are the core characteristics that you'd like every piece of work that you and your teams produce to have?
Yeah. So we've got a Christmas banger coming away. It's all very sort of NDA'd, but we're really excited about that. And yeah, it was like last year we had a year off. I mean, I like it.
Can't tell us who it's for.
I can't tell you who it's for.
Okay, we'll look out for it.
It's a big international brand.
And for Christmas.
And for Christmas.
Okay.
So and other things on that brand as well. But the first project we got was for Christmas. And I think if you're looking at trends that I want to see in all work and COVID, not to talk back about COVID, but it seems like COVID stopped us as an agency feeling fearless. It made everybody overnight feel really responsible. Not responsible for themselves, but like everybody became very responsible. So they would do the half an hour call, and we lost a lot of the frivolity and the sort of we can do anythingness
and the serendipity.
Yeah, and the serendipity, and just it made everybody quite functional.
Yeah.
And what I'm really excited about happening now is we're seeing that the agencies are feeling way more lighter and more fun.
A bit on you personally now then, Rick, as you think ahead. You know, we've spoken about the pressure that sometimes comes with living up to your own success, especially from someone who's won over 170 Lions over your 25-year career. Don't know if you were aware of that.
I was not aware of that.
Pretty massive.
Oh, okay.
So based on everything that's come to this point, but then looking ahead, what's your personal daily mantra and your main motivation as you think about, you know, the next 25 years potentially?
I love the industry. I love what we do. Yeah. I love the people in it. In a world where the industry is changing, rightly so.
Yeah.
It's very easy to see the downsides of things. It's very easy to see what's not there that was once there. But it's a lot harder to see what the possibilities are. And I think making sure that you're in a positive mindset and approaching everything with a childish sort of approaching everything with a little bit of a naivety, I think is kind of how I like to I'd like to think I behave. In reality, I go in and everything pisses me off, but when I have a word with myself and take myself off, stop being a prick, and that's what I like. What we do is still fun. We get to work with some of the best brands on the planet, and they come to us going, "We don't know what we don't know how to do this, but how would you do it?" And really, just accepting that's what we do, and not letting some of the darker forces get in the way.
Ignore the distractions. I think that's a good place to end. Rick, many congratulations on all your success. Thank you for taking us through your journey with such generosity, and best of luck with everything that's still in the making.
Thank you. It's been like a therapy session.
Thanks, Rick.
No, thank you.
You can watch the work that Richard has been discussing today and also catch up on his various stage sessions at Cannes Lions on our intelligence platform, The Work. And if you've enjoyed this edition of the podcast, hit the subscribe button or follow the Lions podcast on your favourite podcasting platform. We'll see you next time on In the Making.